Okay, all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. And as I'm getting set up here, I'm going to hit go live on the Instagram feed. There we go. So we're on live on Instagram. So anyone who is on LinkedIn or LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, welcome. And anybody who's on Instagram, welcome. Just for everybody to know, Instagram, I will not get your feeds over here. So I do need to comment on your over there on Instagram on another window. So, but anyways, we're going to work on that. But hello, Happy New Year at the end of January, the last day of January. And I'm excited to bring this gentleman here with me to the show today. He is Marcos Salazar. He is the CEO of the Adult Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association. Welcome, Marcos.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Really happy to be here.
Thanks. I'm so excited to have you here. And you just came off of having co-produced the Mindful Drinking Fest in Washington, D.C. So I want to delve into how that went. But can you tell the audience what is the Adult Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association and what is the purpose?
Great. Yeah. So the Adult Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association, or you can refer to as ANBA, is the first trade association for adult non-alcoholic beverages. And the adult is really, really key there. So there's obviously non-alcoholic beverages, coffee, tea, water, etc. But it's really adult non-alcoholic beverages. So those that are marketed towards adults of legal drinking age. So in other words, non-alcoholic beer, wine, spirits, and cocktails. So we really needed to be clear on what we mean by adult non-alcoholic beverages. It's not sparkling waters. It's not kind of health drinks. It's really those that are equivalent or alternatives to their alcoholic counterparts. And in some cases, creating entirely new taste profiles that are sophisticated and complex and that are for adults when you celebrate, go out to restaurants and bars or any kind of social situation.
So I don't have to order a Shirley Temple.
Exactly. Or a high sugary kind of old school mocktail or wine that's super, super sweet.
Well, and I got an event, or I went to an event last year and they were like, oh, we have mocktails. And I'm like, what? I drank it and it was a little sweet, but a little tasty. And I'm like, what is it? And it was cheer wine and Fresca mixed together. So that's a very high sugar soda, not a non-alcoholic adult beverage.
Absolutely. And I think what's been really interesting over the past 5 years is there was a lot of organic growth. There was a lot of innovative entrepreneurs that saw a gap in the market, that there were people that are treated in many ways like second-class citizens, that if you go out to a restaurant or bar, or you're at an event, or you're at a wedding, you kind of have Coke and water, and you're kind of an afterthought if you don't necessarily not only drink alcohol, but don't want to drink that particular day, or you just want to mix and match. So a lot of innovative entrepreneurs started launching really great tasting NA beer, wine, spirits, and cocktails. And there was a lot of organic growth, but there needed to be an organization that helped build out the infrastructure and brought everybody together to grow awareness and advocate for the category, and then really support businesses that are really trying to change the way the world drinks. And that's really where ANBA came into play. I recognized that there was that need, so brought together the top brands, the top founders of all the brands, formed a nonprofit board, because a trade association is a nonprofit. And then we really worked together to really launch ANBA. It's a little over 2 years old. So relatively young when you think about associations that have been here for decades or even hundreds of years. But there really needed to be something to really accelerate the growth of the category. When you think about vegetarianism to veganism to plant-based food or gluten-free, you saw kind of the trajectory of starting to get into restaurants, starting to get into grocery stores, and now it's kind of prevalent everywhere. We want to take that same path, but the purpose of the association is, instead of it taking decades, we want to do that in a matter of years.
Well, and I mean, we were talking just before we got on, it's a huge revenue opportunity for bars and hotels and restaurants and things like that. So who can become a member of the association? And who's it for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we kind of have 3 types of memberships. The first is The first two are producers. So those are independent producers that primarily produce non-alcoholic beverages. So you have
Okay.
Athletic, Ritual, Mocktail Club, a lot of those that are producing those particular products, and they don't produce non-alcoholic beverages. And then we also have other companies like Diageo, Boston Beer. We have breweries that also are members as well. And we wanted to make sure that everybody was brought into the conversation and recording efforts to grow the category. And then we have a membership for industry members, and that's specifically those kind of third-party service providers. We have bottle shops, we have law firms, we have marketing firms, we have ingredients companies, those that are really supporting the mission of ANBA, which is really promoting, protecting, and growing the category all the way from inception to production to eventually the marketplace.
Okay, and I want to jump back onto that first category that you said. You said are producers who are not also producing alcoholic beverages. So does that keep out Budweiser and Heineken?
No. And that's why we have both of those. So we have independent producers. So we say independent, meaning those that are primarily producing products. So 75% of their products are adult non-alcoholic beverages. But then we also wanted to include into the conversation, into leading the category, those bigger brands. So we have Boston Beer and Diageo, for example, as members. So we also have them as members, but they have a particular type of membership, which is called an affiliate membership. And then we also have the industry members. So we just wanted to differentiate and make sure that like members understood kind of the different types of members that we have in the category.
Gotcha. Okay. And most associations have different kinds of memberships, just like you explained. And because I just mentioned Budweiser, I mean, how huge is it that they named their non-alcoholic beer the beer of the Olympics for 3 years?
Yeah. 100%. I think that shows where the category is going, and they recognize that this isn't a trend. It's not a fad. It's a fundamental shift in consumer behavior. It's a fundamental shift in how people perceive what they put into their bodies, and it's a fundamental shift on wellness and what that looks like, not just from a food standpoint, but also from a beverage standpoint as well. So they're recognizing that customers are demanding these types of products, and therefore they're putting an emphasis on that. I know that by, I don't know if it was 2025 or 2026, but they wanted over 20% of their revenues to be coming from their adult non-alcoholic beverage portfolio. So there are you're starting to see some of the larger alcoholic beverage companies really, really diving deep into this category.
Now, what makes it a non-alcoholic beverage? You know, what puts it into that category? And for the Budweisers of the world, and then for the home brewers that are building these smaller brands, these entrepreneurial brands?
Yeah, at least in the US, by legal definition, it's 0.5 ABV alcohol by volume or below. So that's really that definition of adult non-alcoholic beverages. In some other places, in other countries, it's slightly different, but that's really kind of how you would define it. And then the other is it's marketed towards adults of legal drinking age, usually as an alternative to alcohol. So again, LaCroix, Coke, they all have alcohol in them as well, trace amounts of alcohol, but they're not primarily marketed towards adults. They're kind of just marketed towards everybody. So that's really that boundary of what we consider adult non-alcoholic beverages. Okay,
awesome. And I want to one more question about the association. Yeah. How and maybe there'll be more, but I have no idea. But
absolutely.
What are your, because as a meeting planner, I know there's ways to lobby for different things. Do you have the ability to lobby for this market, or is it literally just you do really good LinkedIn posts explaining different reports that come out on how the market is growing, et cetera? But what will your members get out of the association?
Absolutely. And I think one of the primary goals of any association is ensuring that the regulatory environment and the marketplace is really conducive to the growth of its members, right? The growth of its businesses. So we do have multiple committees that focus on exactly what you just said, which is we have a government affairs committee, we have an industry and safety standards committee, events committee, finance committee, marketing committee, And under that is even a market development committee. So we have multiple committees that really focus on those areas. Regulation is a really big thing that we're focusing on 2024 and just in general as a whole. And it's a combination of supporting our members and understanding what's the current regulatory environment and what are the laws at the federal and state level. What's unique about ANBA is that most associations only cover something specific, like beer, there's the Brewers Association, or spirits, there's the Distilled Spirits Council of the US. We cover all the categories. So we also focus on, there's some brands that, and products that are under the TTB, but then also the FDA. So really helping our members be able to navigate that. That's one of the key things. The second is then also eventually long-term advocating at either a federal or state level. I know there's a lot of states that have different laws based on non-alcoholic beverages. It's new in some, how you fit that into its current existing laws. So that's the type of stuff that we work on and kind of advocate for and to support our members. Safety and industry standards are really important as well, whether it's labeling, ensuring that the products are the highest quality products. So we provide a lot of support for our members as well in terms of that, in addition to the marketing, in addition to the events, in addition to the overall awareness.
Okay.
And then the other thing is just they get to connect with other members. And that's one of the most valuable things, so they can share knowledge and expertise and really be part of a community that's coming together in a unified voice.
That's awesome. And I think it's, bringing them all together. I was watching something about cancer research that's being done and somebody that's creating a new association to help all the breast cancer researchers come together instead of doing it in their own little silos. So I like that whole concept. Okay. One word in there that you said, regulation, right? And I live in the state of North Carolina, right? And I can go buy, I know the Harris Teeter in my town has non-alcoholic wine in the grocery store for sale. I can't find, I think there's one little shop downtown that sells some non-alcoholic beverages, but otherwise I have to order it online. So I don't have the luxury, and I went to where did I go? Minnesota, and went to a couple of non-alcoholic beverage shops, which were great. And I know there's some in Raleigh, but how can meeting planners and or hoteliers and bars get the product? I mean, if you can't get it from the ABC store and it's not in the grocery stores, how do we get them?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really kind of interesting advantage and challenge as well. So for adult non-alcoholic beverages, since they're not alcohol, you can ship them, right? Okay. So you can get them online, you can purchase them online, which is really, really great. So you don't necessarily have to go to your particular store. And there's a lot of marketplaces out there that you can get pretty much every type of non-alcoholic beverage you can think of. But then you're also mentioning different states have different laws, and they have sometimes different laws based on the different types of products, whether it's beer, whether it's wine. Some laws, you have to get it through a distributor, and there's distribution laws, there's wholesaler laws, there's a lot of kind of different things. And that's part of the purpose of the association, is really to help kind of untangle that for members and then eventually consumers as well. But what I think, and in some instances, if you have an event meeting at a hotel, sometimes those hotels are required to go through specific distributors or purchase through particular areas as well. What's really unique is that there's a lot of really great service third-party businesses that are opening up. You pointed out some of those are bottle shops that strictly only sell non-alcoholic beverages. But you also have companies like Boisson, that they're based in New York, as well as Better Roads that are based in the Midwest. And you can eventually purchase, they're essentially becoming their own form of distributors, and you can buy wholesale from them as well. And what's nice is they're a bottle shop and then a marketplace, and then you can also place all of your orders directly through them to be able to purchase, or the hotel. Wow, the hotel can also start doing that as well. So they actually are building out wholesale accounts with restaurants and bars and hotels. So what they're doing is then they're becoming the curators and the providers and the distributors for those businesses. So they don't have to have 10 different types of accounts based on those individual brands. So those are some really, really good options as well. And again, that's emerged as a result of the growth of the category.
Okay, so let's talk about the growth of the category. And if you don't follow Marcos on LinkedIn, you need to follow him because he does a really good, I'm going to put your LinkedIn profile up there. You do a really good job of breaking down reports that talk about the data and the statistics that come around the growth of the market. So what are you seeing? And I remember the one that you posted from, was it Food and Wine or no, Wine Enthusiast said it was growing, right?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of that is really being based on some stats that are coming out from a couple of really kind of outlets that typically do beverage alcohol stats, which is Nielsen IQ, as well as IWSR, and then Spins is also another one that does kind of the scanning data in grocery stores, and they're starting to emerge or pop up. What's starting to happen now, and we're at the beginning stages, is that because there's this kind of new category, which is adult NA beverages. In the past few years ago, it was getting lumped into non-alcoholic beverages as a whole, which was coffee, tea, and water. And now Nielsen and others are starting to be able to differentiate that. And what you're seeing in all the different data is like this category is growing year after year. And amongst the beer, wine, spirits, and cocktail category, beer tends to be the driver and has been the driver with over, I think it was 83% of non-alcoholic beverage sales are through beer. And you have companies like Athletic and others that are really helping to drive that. But you're starting to see an increase in wine and spirits. And the reason why is because better and better wine and spirits are emerging and popping up as well, and more products. So the availability as well as the quality is increasing. But I think one of the things that I think is important for the audience to know is like who are buying these products, right?
Right, yeah.
And I think there's a couple things for us to really think about. The first is that 94% of purchasers of non-alcoholic beverages are still alcoholic. They still drink alcohol. So they are moderators. They are not the who's driving the category isn't necessarily those that have fully gone sober or that aren't drinking for any particular reason. They're mixing and matching whether they're not, and they're drinking non-alcoholic beverages on particular occasions, whether they don't want to drink during the week, they have a meeting the next day, or sometimes they're mixing and matching and having a full strength beer versus a non-alcoholic beer right after that. So it's people that are wanting to moderate or drink less, which is really, really interesting. So that's very interesting for any type of business because your non-alcoholic drinker and alcoholic drinker are the same customer, and you will sell more if you offer beverages as a whole, if you offer both in your establishment. The second is that there are younger people that are helping to drive the category, Gen Z and millennials who are drinking much less alcohol than previous generations, are really focused on health and wellness as well as mental health. And there's much more information about the negative impacts of alcohol. And they're turning towards still wanting more sophisticated beverages, but not necessarily water or tea. They want something that's unique and different. And then you also have older folks in their 40s, 50s, and above who are also driving the category because they have the disposable income and they may have not been drinking or wanted to moderate for a long time, and now there's great options available. So it really is the gamut of people that are purchasing the products, but there's these interesting trends that are pushing it forward.
Well, even, and talking about eating at a meeting, right? Where's my finger there? If you're at a corporate function, you might want to just have one drink and then you want to still have the perception that you're continuing to drink, or to have not go to a club soda and necessarily be ridiculed, right, for doing that, depending on the setting that you're in. And if it's an old boys club or something like that, it allows you to still do that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're starting to get to that change where there's less and less of a stigma of you, one, not drinking in general. But I think to your point, I was talking to someone recently, a couple friends, and one of them who isn't, who just deciding to not drink anymore, but there's still something about holding something in your hand, sipping, tasting something when you're in those kind of situations. But you don't necessarily want, like you said, a Shirley Temple or something sugary. And now there's these options available. But then I think now we're getting to a point where even if you are not drinking an alcoholic beverage and you're drinking a non-alcoholic beverage, there's no reason for you not to acknowledge or admit that. There's more and more kind of stars, and not just celebrities, but kind of these macro and micro influencers that are starting to really point out or shun drinking alcohol and the negative effects that it has. Dr. Huberman, one of the best podcasts and most listened to podcasts in the world, did a whole episode on the negative impact of alcohol, which all of the Silicon Valley VCs and kind of startup people ended up listening to. And now you're having really kind of prominent VCs and entrepreneurs that are shunning alcohol because it has such a negative impact on productivity. So you're starting to see more of that coming into kind of the culture. And that then is leading, and it's now becoming this badge of honor in some ways, still small, that hangover-free mornings are great, because then you're not going to have to nurse that, and you're going to be a better entrepreneur and a better worker.
Well, a better worker in general. I mean, I remember going to an event years ago, and I'm the meeting planner. So I'm the first one up and the last one to go to bed, but I'm not the last one to go to bed because I'm out partying with the sales teams, right? But let's think about what our sales teams are doing and how much money they are. And actually 2 weeks ago, I shared with Kate and Jen from Zero Proof Collective, one of my former coworkers lost her job because she got so intoxicated at an event. She fell into the fountain at the hotel and split her head open and all that. So that's not what we want from business meetings, right?
Yeah. And I think at the core, what it's really about is options and inclusion. We just want, I know that there are some people that kind of shun non-alcoholic beverages. They kind of say, what's the point, etc. We just want to provide people options, whether they want to drink or not, and they have the option for a great tasting non-alcoholic beverage. And we want people to feel included in any type of social situation. So for me, I got married a little over a year ago, and we had a full a bar that had alcoholic drinks and a full bar that had non-alcoholic drinks. So everybody was able to, when we did a toast, everybody had non-alcoholic and alcoholic champagne. We had pictures of margaritas, and then we of full strength, and then we had pictures of non-alcoholic margaritas as well. I had friends who were pregnant that were dancing on the dance floor, and they had spritzes and NA beers. So everybody felt part of this the event. And it's really, again, making sure that you just have options in different types of occasions, so people have the ability to be able to drink something really tasty.
Now, I want to talk about the separate bars for those. Do you find that that's easier to do, or should we be melding them together on the same bar?
I mean, you could do both. I mean, I think the thing that was, I'm obviously CEO of the Adult Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association, so people knew they were going to get both. But I think that the products are differentiated enough that you would be able to tell, but you could be able to kind of separate that out. I've been to a bar that on one side, like we had two full separate bars, right? We had a 200 some person wedding, but there was a smaller wedding that had just an NA option and a couple NA options on one side and then on the other. So it kind of just depends on kind of your audience and how you want to be able to structure it. But I mean, it was great because I got married in New Mexico. The elevation is 7,000 feet. If you drink an alcoholic beverage, it's going to hit you much more. All the East Coasters that came, it's going to hit you much more. We let people know that there were the options available so that people mixed and matched and had their full strength margarita, and then they had a non-alcoholic beverage. And that was great because then people got to party till 4:30 in the morning.
Wait a minute. You were up till 4:30 in the morning?
Yes. Yeah. We were partying at 4:30 in the morning for our wedding. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. You weren't the bride and groom that ran off and went on your honeymoon and left.
No. We were dancing till then.
That's nice. That's awesome. Okay, so one of the let's just jump to the festival. So this past weekend, it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the Mindful Drinking Fest, which was started by your friend and a guest here on the podcast, Derek Brown. And I forgot her name. Also, Maria, thank you. How did that, tell us about that Mindful Drinking Fest. And I think you told me there were over 40 brands there.
Yeah, I mean, it was really great. I think ANBA has always been, for the past couple of years, focused on how do we grow the industry, support our members, support those within the industry. But a big part of our mission is growing awareness of the category, and that means engaging with consumers. So we had always been thinking about doing some kind of consumer-facing event. And Derek had been doing this he had done a couple events last year, Mindful Drinking Fest. And I always think about, how do you scale through partnerships, and how do you collaborate and amplify each other's impact? So we connected and realized there was a really great opportunity of bringing our members in, as well as taking their event experience and really co-producing and co-creating this really amazing event and amplifying it and growing it bigger. And they did a really amazing job of being able to bring some awesome activations and event experiences. We were able to bring a lot of our members in, and had over 40 sponsors and brands, over 120 different products. So people got to try a variety and plethora of non-alcoholic beverages. But then we also had panels. We had a non-alcoholic karaoke. We had sound bathing in one of the parts of DC. We also had a disco rave. So it was just a lot of really great experiences, all without booze. So that was really fun, and it was well attended, and people actually loved being there. But I think the other amazing thing, and it was great to see, is yes, people are purchasing and wanting to consume non-alcoholic beverages, but it's really a vehicle for connection. It's really a vehicle for celebration, and it's really a vehicle for social wellness. And that was really on display, where you saw all these connections and this community being built and strengthened. Right. And that was one of the beautiful things about the weekend.
Awesome. And I know there were like beverage tours and different things. So I was planning on going. Unfortunately, I missed it. So it's on my agenda for the next one. So what do you think came out of that? I mean, I know last year, Derek, there was a really good article in NPR that came out of it, but what do you think is going to come out of it from the attendees of that event? I mean, and was there any data collected on, what the demographics of those attendees are? Are they drinkers? Are they non-drink? Are they? Yeah.
Yeah, data to become. That's all kind of post what we're working on, as well as kind of getting all that feedback, because we're going to be doing this annually. So we want to grow this bigger and bigger and bigger. So using that data to then make it better and better. I mean, it was a combination of those that were non-alcoholic beverage fans, those that were kind of sober curious or curious. And then those that are kind of thinking about moderating. I had a couple friends that I invited that had one recently stopped drinking, and one hasn't really drank, but is also a bar owner. So it was really great for them to be able to see all the wide variety. I think some of the things that are going to come about is just like, there is this community. It felt like a big step in growing the overall movement of changing the way the world drinks. I think changing the concept and the perception of, if I say, hey, Tracy, let's grab a drink, the default isn't, oh, I'm assuming it's an alcoholic beverage. And it's just a great tasting beverage, independent of what it is and where we're going to have it, because hopefully there's amazing non-alcoholic options there. So I think it's towards kind of normalizing that. I think the other thing that was really valuable is we had a lot of kind of like influencers, as well as those that were helping to drive the category, that were non-producers, that were somehow involved. And this was the first time they met in person for the first time.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So they all had done like Zoom meetings or knew each other on Instagram or LinkedIn, and they all met each other. A lot of them met each other for the first time. So that was what was really amazing as well. And I see a lot of partnerships and collaborations coming out of that as well.
Okay. And
yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to think, like, two of the key sponsors, Toast as well as Ritual Zero Proof, They like I drink them regularly. Toast is this beautiful sparkling beverage that is tea based. It's kind of a substitute for it's a wine alternative. Has like hints of cranberry and ginger, and then Ritual has this aperitivo that's just very bitter. And I make my spritzes with them as well. And so it's like thinking about them being able to connect and be able to partner and do some collaborations and making new drinks. It was pretty cool to see.
So even the brands are collaborating. That's pretty
Yeah, I
cool.
think
Yeah.
there were a lot of brands that hadn't participated before. We have a new brand that does this ginger beer, and it's made with a Scotch bonnet pepper, and it's
Okay.
definitely the best ginger. I think it's the best ginger beer that I've ever had, because it has such a strong kick. And they were just became ANBA members. They were this was their first kind of event that they had done with us, and their product was being mixed without even kind of like some of the bartenders went to go and taste the ginger beer, and then
Uh-huh.
just took it because they started making drinks with it because it was just so good. So
Wow.
that's kind of some other interesting things that emerge is like it's an opportunity for collaboration.
Okay, so one of the things too for me being at home, I am not a bartender, and how do I mean, and I have how do I mix those drinks to make it simplistic, right? Not Derek Brown level, because I'm not going to be Derek Brown level of a bartender at any point of my
Mhm.
life.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple things to kind of think about. The first is that, too, if you want to kind of make your own drinks, there's definitely alternatives that are direct alternatives to alcohol, which
Okay.
is you can get your NA whiskey, NA rum, and you can get like a Ritual zero proof rum, mix it with and I just want to share the name. It's Uncle Uncle Wakely's ginger beer. So you mix that with Ritual Zero Proof rum, and then you end up having a great dark and stormy. And it's a pretty simple cocktail that you can do. So there are like those one-to-one products that you can mix together for
Okay.
alcohol to make a typical Manhattan, a typical dark and stormy, etc. But then you also have, and I think what's going to be emerging more and more is that you also have botanical based spirits that don't
Okay.
even have a direct alternative. They're their own products in and of themselves. So you can actually kind of taste them. And I have a lot of those types of products, and I just mix it with soda water and then use
Okay.
that. So we have a
Okay.
company, one of our members called Wilderton, and they're based out of Portland, and they have a couple products, botanical distilled spirits, and one is called Eartherin, and it's made with bergamot and Douglas fir and a few other kind of really interesting ingredients. When I had it, and I had it with just club soda, it was so kind of strong and powerful. I felt like I was walking in the Pacific Northwest in the forest. I had that
Wow.
visceral of a reaction, and I just really enjoy it. It's 0 calories, so if I'm ever kind of going keto, I'll actually drink that
Uh-huh.
as having something tasty. So it is pretty easy to be able to make some of these products at home, and then most of the products are also having versions of ready to drink cocktails. So they're
Okay.
already kind of making their
Mhm.
own versions of a gin and tonic if they're making a non-alcoholic gin. So you can also find those as well.
Well, and that's like the spiritless, and
Mhm.
Lauren's been on the show as well talking about those, the canned
Yep.
non-alcoholic ready to drinks, which I have some in my refrigerator downstairs. So yeah, that's really interesting. Now, how let's get back to the hotel market, because I'm producing 3 events this year, and I know I've already gotten cookbook back from one hotel that saying, hey, we don't offer these things because nobody asks for them. What's the best way for meeting planners to get the buy-in from the hotels to do this?
Mhm.
And I've said it before. I mean, to me, it's perfect for a planner to do this because they can increase their food and beverage spend, with a non-alcoholic thing. But we need to get the hotels buy-in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the first and foremost is that obviously you can present data and kind of show
Hmm.
that there's market
Right.
demand, but I think at the end of the day, it's really like it's a customer service issue. Like, are
Okay.
you really treating your customers in the best way that you possibly can by offering them alcoholic beverages, and then everybody's kind of an afterthought. And I think
Right.
that's kind of the first thing to be able to think about, is that you want to create the best experience for your customers, and that's how you end up integrating it. I think the second point to your point is that from a price point, you can sell someone a water at a couple dollars, or a soda.
$9. Yeah.
Yeah, but you also have a you're right. You're totally right in that context. But if you have a sophisticated non-alcoholic beer or wine or a ready-to-drink cocktail, that can be at a much, much higher price point. To your point about the spend, and then I think the other is that if you want kind of to your point about your friend who probably drank a little bit too much, you probably want your attendees to be able to moderate at some level.
Right.
And if they're drinking something sophisticated, they might want to drink something that's the equivalent and not necessarily want to switch out into something that's just water. So
Right.
you could have that. And then I think the other is that there's an opportunity for a discovery as well, to be able to for people to be able to discover really new and interesting types of beverages.
Right. And Derek and I talked about that too, because when you're looking at a hotel bartender at an event in the catering area of the hotel, not the bar up front, it's not a level of a bartender like Derek or those people up front, right? So we
Mhm.
have to make it easier for them to do, and for them to learn and experiment too, and educate them on that. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um,
and I would say the ready to drink cocktails are a really good option as well, because they can be very familiar. You can have a direct NA version of pretty much every single type of cocktail, a
mhm.
mojito, a sangria, a cosmopolitan. They're all out there and they're really delicious.
Okay.
And then the other thing sometimes is I know that some bartenders will use those ready to drink cocktails as a base and then
Uh-huh.
do something different with it to make a different, more complex
Oh,
cocktail. So that's another
that's a
option as
yeah,
well.
that's a good idea. So we've got a bunch of people on Instagram that are following us as well. But Kate Faulkner just piped in, who you know, I think.
Mhm.
Congratulations on your brand new baby boy.
Oh
But
yeah.
she has, regarding this topic, what strategies do you find are the most effective in educating consumers on premise about non-alcoholic options?
Yeah, I mean, and those are kind of two different. So we'll cover the consumers, and then we'll
Okay.
cover the on premise. And I'm assuming they're thinking the on premise meaning like the owners.
On premise, yeah, I guess so. Exactly, because the owners, or in a hotel or the convention center, the food and beverage directors who
Yeah,
might
yeah.
not get out in the world and understand that there's these options.
Yeah. I think from a consumer standpoint, the reality is actually just sips to lips, meaning taste,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
They need to be able to have the option to be able to taste. And this has always been the case very, very early on, even like 4 or 5 years ago, where Athletic was literally giving tons of beers away at athletic events and marathons just so people can to taste the product. And what happens is and I do this in my own, like when I love creating events. I love hosting events. We have a great house to be able to do that. So I end up presenting and helping people be able to taste these non-alcoholic beverages. And once they taste them, they don't. It really dispels any myths that they may have or believe in, that NA beer is just like a very sorry version of a beer, and they're not really strong or not complex, or the cocktails are just too sweet, or they're going to be a bunch of
Right.
sugar in them. So I think that's really kind of that first step. And then the second is that I think that there's an opportunity of playing into, and you've seen this much more on the dry this year in terms of dry slash damp January, is that
Uh-huh.
a lot of the articles that you're seeing are less about these are great non-alcoholic options available, and really integrating health and wellness as them
Okay.
being a part of health and wellness as a whole.
Right.
So I think that's another way that you can really kind of talk about as people are thinking much more consciously or mindfully. And then the third is like alcohol unfortunately impacts your work and impacts your next day.
Mhm.
So you can be able to really enjoy and have a great beverage and not suffer any consequences the next day.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and um two things that came out of that too, because you were talking about people thinking, oh, this is non-alcoholic beer, wine, it's not going to taste good. That hotel convention person said to me, well, we have grape juice,
Yeah.
So I mean, wine is grape juice, and regular wine is grape juice because it came from grapes. But how do we dispel that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, again, I'll kind of share this, and this again is a much more challenging thing, and I think this is why it's slower when it comes to hotels or on premise, is those people have to taste it too.
Right.
At the end of the day, because if they have a perception over decades of NA wine companies that were kind of just chugging along and selling very high sugary or very sweet, essentially grape juice when it comes to wine, they're not going to change their perception no matter how much you tell them that there's great NA wine options available. So they're the ones that are actually going to have to taste it as well. So you can present as much data as you want. You can kind of talk yourself, say as much as you can to them, but at the end of the day, they really need to taste it. So the one thing is that I think that a lot of our members would be very open to being able to send samples if you're going to be hosting an event, to be able to convince those decision makers to carry the products.
Okay, awesome. Now, my friends here just popped in as well on LinkedIn, 2 alpha gals. They can't wait to watch this from the beginning. But so that's 2 alpha gals is about the mammal allergy, food allergy. And there was an article today that I saw, or a post I saw today, is that vegan doesn't mean free from milk and eggs. It should, but there's no regulation about what the word vegan means. So are these brands, are they more in tune with putting labels on there and sharing what's in the beverages than some of the alcoholic partners, because they're not regulated to put the allergen ingredients into on the labels? Does that make sense?
Well, non-alcoholic beverages are required to have food labels because they're not. So if you look, every non-alcoholic beverage does actually have the calories, etc., because that's part of their regulation. So it actually does have those, and it does have the ingredients, unlike their alcoholic counterparts that do not. But there is legislation that is going to be changing that in the US, where they are going to require that, and I think that's going to be an interesting wake-up call for people to see all the ingredients and all the calories that are kind of in their alcoholic counterparts. So it's going to be interesting to see how beverage alcohol brands navigate that.
Yeah, especially with this market of, hey, I want to be healthier, right? I don't want all that sugar, et cetera.
Yeah, and I think to kind of be clear on that, I mean, it's interesting, the kind of the vegan is that, again, it's non-alcoholic, so 0.5 ABV or below. There's been tons of research that's an absolute safe level in terms of consuming that product. You'd have to drink 20 non-alcoholic beers to even feel a buzz, kind of thing. But then you also have like breads. You have Domino's pizza that actually has a higher content of alcohol when it's raw than a non-alcoholic beer. Orange juice has 0.16 up to 7.9. ABV. So orange juice can have more than a non-alcoholic beer when it comes to alcohol. Just realizing that, I think to your point, like there are certain products, like gluten-free doesn't mean gluten-free. There are still parts of there are some gluten in there. And I think for us, part of our goal as an ANBA and as an industry is we want to be open and transparent and letting people know what are the ingredients. The second is that I come from a social impact background, and I've worked with a lot of social impact companies, consulting and coaching and event production. And it was really great to transition into this adult non-alcoholic beverage category, because all our members are purpose-driven, mission-driven, sustainability-driven. We have tons of members that are B Corps and are on their way to become B Corps. That's a thing that we're helping to support our members with. So that sustainability and transparency is an integral part to the culture and the ethos of ANBA, our members, and the category as a whole.
Okay, so because you said the word sustainability, and I love the fact that they are focused on that. So it'll be really interesting at the Natural Products Expo West, to see how many of them are there. So what about the sustainability and the packaging, right? There was a big push a couple of years ago about the plastic that comes wrapped around all the different products that are in grocery stores, et cetera. What are some of the sustainability standards that your members are following to make sure that they meet those B Corp guidelines?
Yeah, and it's really interesting from a shipping standpoint. I do think that's obviously going to vary from brand to brand, and we
Right.
are going to be, and that's actually going to be a focus in 2024, is helping our brands to become much more sustainable. I'm talking to a couple partners to help do that and also provide sustainability reports for our members. But one of the things that members have to be aware of, adult non-alcoholic beverage product producers, is that because there's no alcohol, they can freeze during shipping. Right, like you can put a
That's
bottle
huge.
of
Yeah.
vodka and things in the freezer. Non-alcoholic beverages can freeze. So the first kind of couple years, 2020, 21, when brands were shipping, some of the products were busting because they were being held too long on the trucks. They just weren't. So they have to actually have that added layer of thinking about packaging. But it's really interesting. As I purchase a lot of products from our members, and I've started to see much more sustainability focused packaging. There are less of those that are using plastic and a number of other things, and they're using some form of cardboard or some kind of recycled material. And they have to balance that out with making sure that the product is insulated enough that it's not going to freeze. So that is kind of one area. I think one of the things, and this is why this industry membership partnership is really important, and we start working with others in the industry, is that we want to work with vendors and organizations that are starting to support CPG brands to become much more sustainable, not only from like the shipping packaging, but the packaging itself, whether it's bottles, whether it's cans, or any other type of form of the production.
Awesome. Okay, so have you seen any are there any good case studies that you've shown that a hotel, a restaurant, a bar has incorporated this into non-alcoholic adult beverages into their beverage programs that they're like, holy wow, we should have done this sooner?
I think we're at the beginning stages of that. I mean, in all honesty, for the level of what we would consider a great program, we're just at the beginning stages. I know Hilton is starting to integrate that, and a number of others. It's interesting, like there's even hotel lounges that are starting to integrate that. But this is just literally over the past like 6 months to a year. So I think there needs to be a bit more time to figure out what those case studies are. I think in the next few years, we're going to start mapping out restaurants, bars, hotels, I think are who's doing really great things that then provides a template for other types of hotels or hospitality-based businesses.
Okay. So what do you see as the future of ANBA?
One of the things we just launched. Yeah. One of the things we just launched last year is an ANBA in the UK, EU. So we have another chapter in that region and possibly other chapters globally, because we want to help support the overall growth of the category, one, on a global scale, but to that point of government affairs as well as industry standards, we want everybody to be operating so that when you go from country to country, brands know how to navigate and also label their products properly. It reduces cost and waste, but we also want consumers not to be confused as well. So we know that when they're traveling, especially if they're going to a hotel, they kind of know exactly what they're getting and what particular labeling or naming means. So working on a global scale is going to be that first part. I think the second is that you've mentioned a couple trade shows, and one of the things that ANBA is doing is really partnering on a very deep level with a lot of the trade shows. So Expo East and their new one, Utopia, National Restaurant Association, Bar and Restaurant Expo, Bar Conrad Brooklyn, Fancy Food, kind of the major shows to really, one, have a much greater presence there, but also to educate those communities of buyers to help them understand, one, that there's these amazing options available, how to integrate them, and then how the NA can help scale their business and scale their revenue. So that's going to be another kind of big thing. And I think over the next couple of years, you're going to start to see penetration in restaurants and bars and hotels and events much, much more. And we will start getting those case studies. And I think we're at that beginning stages, and then it's going to start accelerating to the point that if you do not integrate these, you're going to be left behind. You're going to be the outlier. And that's where I really see the category going in the next few years.
Well, and that brings me back to a conversation that you and I were having at the beginning of the show. You said Great Britain or the UK just instituted something about that.
Yeah, well, it was just some interesting data from the brew pub the brew pub association in the UK EU. So they kind of are the association for pubs in the UK EU,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of issued a pretty dire warning to their membership and kind of overall that if you do not integrate any beverages, you're putting your business at risk. And
Oh, wow.
pubs need to integrate more and more of these products because more and more consumers are looking for these and kind of demanding these. And this isn't just in dry January where
Yeah.
your sales are going down. This is across the year because people, and there's more and more data that comes out, is that more people try January this year than ever before. But
Oh,
those
wow.
people that continue the benefits and kind of the moderation elements of dry January continues throughout the year. And if they do try non-alcoholic beverages, that continues to be a regular part of their
Mm-hmm.
drinking behavior throughout the year, whether that is at home or whether that's in any
Right.
type of establishment.
Well, and if it reminds me on a walk a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine said she and her boyfriend were doing it, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sleeping so much better."
Yeah.
Right? Doing the dry January. Okay, 2 more questions.
Yeah,
Because we're at the 50-minute mark. We could talk all day, Marcos.
absolutely.
Um, what, are some best practices that you've seen bars do? I mean, I've talked to Lauren, and I've talked to Kate and Jen and Derek. What are best practices that bars and restaurants and hotels can use to incorporate these into their food and beverage programs? And we've talked about, hey, here's the separate non-alcoholic list, or incorporating them into the regular list with a little asterisk. Are there other best practices that you've seen?
Yes. The first best practice is actually putting it on the menu if you have a non-alcoholic beverage. And that
Uh-huh.
has to that is the case. Like there and I understand that there's financial things you have to take into consideration of redoing a menu, but if you have an NA beverage, just put it on the menu. That's kind of the first thing you need to do. The second is actually talking with my friend who owns a bar in DC, and I hung out with him at the Mindful Drinking Fest this past weekend, and he was sharing that he carries athletic brewing as one of their options, and he kind of had it at one part of the menu, and he actually put it at the top in one of the most prominent areas on the right
Mhm.
side, along with saying non-alcoholic options, and he ended up selling like 6 to 7 times more any beer just
Wow.
for that, right? And it's a small dive bar, but it's
Right.
still it was selling infinitely much more. So you need to put it in a really prominent place. The second is that there's a couple ways to be able to think about it. I would say that you can have a menu, and if you have your cocktail list, you could definitely put that asterisk there, and there could be an NA version of that cocktail. And
Mhm.
then you could also create separate or unique cocktails that are directly non-alcoholic in that option as well. So you actually then provide a plethora. All the alcoholic versions can be made non-alcoholic, and then there's some other really interesting adult
Yep.
non-alcoholic cocktails that you can have as well, along with the beer and the wine. And you don't want to put it as an afterthought, because if it is an afterthought, you're treating your customers as an afterthought. Again,
Right.
94% of people that are purchasing non-alcoholic beverages still drink. They may not want to drink at the time that they are coming to your
Mhm.
establishment.
That's a huge stat, and I think that's really, really important. So thank you for resharing that. And I did type it in, and hopefully I got the stat right, but I'll
Great.
fix it if I didn't. But yeah, that's mind blowing. Okay, so my final question that I ask everybody, and coming from your perspective, what does a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage, in this particular instance, look like to you?
You mean like in terms of the category, or can you?
Just what if you were going out to an
Mm.
event, or dinner, what does that kind of safe, sustainable, and inclusive experience look like to you?
Yeah, and I mean, it's really funny. You're making me put my event hat on,
Uh-huh.
what we used to do when we were doing events in New York City is we always had non-alcoholic beverages that were options for people, and we'd also serve wine and sometimes beer. always kind of food that thinking just intentionally. And there's only so much obviously that you can do, but providing vegan and gluten-free options available for people as well. And it's really not super hard. And the reason why is because there's a plethora of options available. And then from a
Mhm.
sustainability standpoint, I'm always just thinking about how can you kind of go as zero waste as possible. And that could
Mhm.
be when it comes to the glassware and whether it's compostable or recyclable. It could be any type of plates, anything, bottles, anything that you're thinking about, or possibly using reusable cups. And then the other thing that we would always do at our events is, especially if it was a ticketed event, is then we would partner with a nonprofit to offset the carbon footprint of every single
Mhm.
attendee as well. So it does take a little bit of time, but I think what you can do is when you put these things into place and you're able to communicate with your attendees that you're being very intentional and thoughtful about the event, making sure
Mhm.
that you're including and taking into account as many people as possible. But then that's also creating some great brand equity for yourself as well, and showing that you're wanting to be sustainable. So that's kind of how I end up thinking about it.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Well, thank you so much, Marcos. I really appreciate this. Lots of great data and reasons to do this, and I look forward to seeing what else you what ANBA can do for the market and the industry. And let's see, I've got this thing here show so you can connect with Marcos on LinkedIn. That's his LinkedIn profile, and then and if you want to say it, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, LinkedIn is the best place. I'm really kind of diving deep into LinkedIn this year. I'm going to be continually posting lots of stats and information, not only kind of about this category as a whole from trends, but also just helping to support other businesses from an entrepreneurial standpoint. So
Mhm.
there's that, or you can always, if you're looking to learn more about the adult non-alcoholic beverage category, you can go to nabeverages.org. We'll also be
Mhm.
transitioning to a new website. We were able to get the domain ANBA, ANBA.org. So we'll
Oh,
be
awesome.
transitioning that as well. But you can go to nabeverages.org at the moment, and feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, and happy to connect and support in any way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think it's a vibrant market that properties, meeting planners need to take advantage of, going forward to create that inclusive experience. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. Those people on LinkedIn, Wendy and Courtney and Lacey, et cetera. Thank you so much for being here. And then Kate and the two Alpha Gals, I really appreciate you being here as well. So everyone, until next time, we're here every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern, talking to experts just like Marcos on a variety of different things that pertain to eating at a meeting. And if you want to reach out to me, reach out. You can find me on thrivemeetings.com, and or you can join the that's Marcos. You can join the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group as well. So until then, stay safe and eat well. And Marcos, stay on with me for a few minutes. Okay.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Tracy.
everybody. You're welcome.